fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
The constitutional point of view was critical for Jefferson's support of the Bill of Rights.
As we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens, I can hear you!
Is time running out?
It's Saturday. Welcome to the Hayden Collins radio program. Woo! What a week. For those of you who are politically inclined, it's enough to make you nervous. Iran, strikes, Sarah Sanders, the president, what some Democrats are saying, and how they look forward to a better socialist country. Oh. What's happening in Hong Kong? Holy moly. China may be coming to an awakening. Protests all over communist China, Hong Kong. Protests all over Iran. All over Iran. Huge protest. People wanting food and, oh, I don't know, the necessities of life. A few things may be going wrong there. All right, so let's do some oddball stuff this weekend. Observations. Got to do observations this weekend because if you turn on, mainstream media, you're going to get all you need on this stuff. So we're going to stay different. So observation number one this week. We always like talking about the propaganda and how diplomacy is done around the world. So if you did watch mainstream media, you're obviously aware that the Prime Minister of Japan went over to Iran to kind of smooth things over and make things right. And while he was there, they messed around with two of his ships, delivering oil to Japan. Could have been disastrous. Well, it was disastrous, but it could have been worse. And that's almost appropriate timing that you would pick out Japanese tankers in the middle of a negotiation that you couldn't ask for. If you were to start a fire, you couldn't ask for a better situation. You have literally gasoline and matches. So that creates a diplomatic issue that, well, it makes Japan look like the victim when they were trying to help out. One, it puts Iran in a very bad position, looking like an aggressor. And so let's take the next step. Let's talk about who in Iran would be the aggressor. So there certainly are factions inside Iran right now. There are protests going on. There's a lot of people trying to get away from the mullahs. And I want everybody to keep in mind, and up until 1979, Iran was our strongest ally. The Shah of Iran, the whole thing. And our president at the time thought it would be a really good idea to take the Shah out, to destabilize energy prices, to bring down gas prices for the United States. And you can almost say that's where this whole thing got started. And it went downhill from there. But the Carter administration with CIA, actually you can go back and look at films on YouTube on what they did. They actually sent troops over there and destabilized the area, and that's how we ended up with Iran and mullahs. And it definitely destabilized the area because we spent generations over there trying to normalize things, and it's a little rough. It is a little rough. So the original mistake was destabilizing the region under the Carter administration. And there's a series after that you've had, corrective actions that later either look like mistakes or good ideas, and you just don't know still. The way things are going, you just don't know. So you look at Iran right now, and you've still got, people from 1979 that are still alive over there going, hey, we had it much better in 1979 than we have it now. And, this isn't going real well for everybody, and yada, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you're standing around looking at these guys, okay, who's protesting? It's the youth that are protesting. It's not the old guys. They're sitting around taking it easy, and the young ones are out there protesting because, the parents told them stories about, hey, you get to go to the beach and actually swim instead of being beaten. And, yada, 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 and blah, blah, blah. So there's an undermining position in that country that an effective strategist could take advantage of. And I do mean take advantage of. Because if the opportunity shows up to support an uprising and turn that government over and release those people, I would dare think that opportunity would be taken advantage of. Now that's just Iran. So let's take diplomacy over here to Hong Kong and China. Now a little bit of history about Hong Kong. Now I'm not going to go too far back, but the British had their hands on Hong Kong for a long time. And they had to turn it back over to China. It was part of a lease agreement, or let's call it a lease agreement. So the British government left Hong Kong, turned it back over to China. Truckloads of pickle-suited individuals came driving into the town, singing Chinese songs, and everybody's happy, hunky-dory. The government moved in. Now all of a sudden, Hong Kong's got protesters to the tunes of millions, apparently. Of course, over there, that's... let's see, how do we do this? Millions of protesters in China do not equate to the same percentage of protesters elsewhere because they have such a population. It's huge. So keep in mind there's a, let's say, a differential of numbers. How about that? So they have plenty of protesters. They're raising all kinds of pain. And you have to wonder who's going to benefit from that. Now the Chinese government's got their hands full. They've got an economic problem. They've been taking advantage of us for years and nobody's done anything about it. Now President Trump's doing something about it, and it's actually causing them to go, oh, wait a second, we're hurting now. And the reason they're hurting, and this is layman stuff. I mean, it doesn't take much to research this. You guys can jump out there and research it yourself, but every time the Chinese government gets into a pinch, they devalue their money. Well, they can only do it so many times. And they're pretty close to the last time right now, before it collapses. Then what do you do? And keep in mind, as a Chinese citizen, you think our Social Security is bad. Half of everything you make goes to the government. Half of everything you make goes to the government. It's part of your Social Security program because the government's taking care of you. And I'll tell you a story. It's actually disturbing. This is very disturbing. Doing the X-ray test, they were doing an X-ray test on these rims, these wheels. And what they do is they test the welds and they X-ray everything just to make sure it's okay before they release it on the market. Well, the X-ray machine had a motor that turned the wheel during the X-ray so they could get, a good X-ray of it. Well, the motor failed. So until they got the next motor, what they did is they put one of their Chinese workers in there, and his job was to spin that wheel while the X-ray was on so they could get a good X-ray of the wheel. Now you got to figure at the end of a 12-hour shift, he's cooked. Because he's been hit with all kinds of radiation for 12 hours. You got to think about that. He was baked. The way the story was relayed to me, when the American expressed concern over that, the Chinese supervisor turned around and says, "We have many Chinese." The guy's expendable. The value of life is so different, and the guy doesn't have a choice. Do this or die. And oh, by the way, you're going to die. Or maybe they didn't even tell him. I don't know. So think about that for a moment. So you got the people in Hong Kong doing this huge uprising. You got like an economic problem in China because we're laying the law down to them, going, okay, we're tired of this crap. And all of a sudden North Korea is quiet. North Korea is not saying a word. So who would benefit the most from an upset China, a quiet North Korea, a Venezuela that's completely collapsed? If you guys have been following that one, that's upside down and backwards. Oh boy, and I tell you, I have to bring this up. Here's another part of the diplomacy. Mexico found an army. Believe it or not, Mexico found an army. I don't know where they found it. I guess it was laying around somewhere in a hangar. But President Trump decided, hey, okay, we're gonna do tariffs until you straighten your act up. We're tired of this crap. And then all of a sudden, Mexico finds an army and starts enforcing their own immigration laws. Holy Toledo, how did that happen? And it didn't cost us a thing. Boy, what a negotiator. Isn't it good that we have somebody who knows how to negotiate in the White House? This does say a lot for career politicians. They negotiate for themselves, not for the individuals they represent. I hope that other people during their lifetimes will see somebody like President Trump who negotiates for the country. And the best thing about it is he's not owned. Lobbyists don't own him. Special interest groups don't own him. So he can go do whatever he wants, and they can get upset about it, and they can hire and gripe and do whatever. And he's on his game. And he's used to it because they've been against him his whole life. It's not like they've been friendly to him. I'm sure some of them have. But in his position right now, I think he's got it. Suppose the other thing that he's got going on is anything to do with President Trump right now. You guys remember during the election, here's some more diplomacy for you. He knows how to dominate the press. Good news, bad news, it doesn't matter. He's got to have his name in the press every day, and it works. He's a great individual about self-promoting. And that's the key to it. You got to self-promote. It doesn't cost you anything to self-promote. You'll sound like a egotistical, dirtbag every now and then because people will get tired of self-promotion. But not everybody hears every self-promotion. So he does a lot of self-promotion. And I love the way he phrases things. You don't hear a thing negative. You hear a thing not positive. Think about that for a moment. You don't hear a thing negative. You just hear a not positive. So for example, if he's calling somebody out, he'll say, that's sad. Okay? He won't say, oh, you dirtbag. No, nothing like that. No, people will personally attack him and go, oh, President, you dirtbag. And he'll go, oh, that's sad. That poor thing. And it just immediately undermines anything they have to say. And it undermines their position because they came out with such an aggressive negative position. So he's definitely mastered that. He mastered that from the last campaign, and he certainly mastered it now, and he's using it. My great part about this that I love is he's using it against other countries, not just individuals. He practices on the people in Hollywood, okay? That's his warm-up. Then he goes to other countries and just tears them up. Now, wouldn't it be neat? And you're talking about daring and bold. Wouldn't it be neat if he ended up taking a trip to North Korea? Saying, here I am, let's talk. You talking about being bold. Bringing it on. What happens if he takes a trip to Russia and says, here I am, let's negotiate? Boy. And let's say for the sake of discussion that he's successful on both negotiations. The people that will come after him with a negative, his response is going to be, oh, that's so sad. And that irritates him. That irritates him so bad because it's not that he's responding to their attack. He's just, not even providing a judgment. He's just saying, oh, that's sad. I think there's going to be a lot of people that's going to pick up that trait and use it in the future because that's a very effective trait when it comes to negotiations and when it comes to, political sabotage, if you will. All right, I want to hit one other observation. And this is a weird kind of observation. Has anyone noticed a trend in these sanctuary cities of police officers getting diseases that have not been around for a long, long time? And this is going to be a medical thing. I'm sure I'm going to be corrected by many medical people out there. One of my boys is a cop. He was talking to me about some of the things that they're reading. And you got Los Angeles Police Department and San Francisco Police Department where officers are getting tetanus from having to deal with the homeless. It's like, what? The complaint from the veterinarian, this one floored me. The veterinarian was getting these dogs, family pets, whatever. I mean, not all of Los Angeles is stacked on top of each other. Not all of San Francisco stacked on top of each other. People actually have yards and there's neighborhoods. And dogs do run free. They just got to have a leash. So these dogs would come home and they're limping and they're, not doing right. And people would take them to the vet. Oh my God, something's wrong with my dog, Well, the dog had wandered into the homeless camp area and ate some refuge. That's a polite way of putting it. And let's say this refuge was contaminated with all the drugs those guys were doing. Oh, I don't know, heroin, whatever. It was filled in that refuge. So the dog eats it and finds his way home and he's higher than a kite. He's way out in left field and the dog is drugged. Big complaint. Huge complaint. And I have to, I've read this 2 or 3 times. I've even mentioned it before, but we're going to come into a cycle here where the major metropolitan areas of the United States are going to find themselves in a position that they can no longer create a tax base to sustain what they've put in place. Detroit's a really good example of that. And without that tax base, they can't maintain services, they can't maintain the area, they certainly can't maintain police protection or anything else. We are beginning to see the steps in San Francisco and Los Angeles that if it wasn't for the weather, and I do mean it's very nice, I mean it's not that it's snowing on people, every now and then it does rain, but if it was not for the weather, I think it would have already had collapsed. Because the streets are lined, even near the universities, streets are lined with homeless people all over the place. I did get to see something that I thought was ridiculous. Keep in mind, politics is a machine. It's a business. People make money off of it. That's what they do. The group that showed up out there was a filming crew, and they came out to one of the homeless camps. And they were telling everybody via bullhorn. They said, if you come up here and put on these shirts and walk with these protest signs and allow us to film you, we'll give you $50 each when we're done filming you. I said, wow, I got to see this. So we're sitting there at the coffee shop, looking across the street in the park. And I said, I'm going to take an extra few minutes to watch this one. So they had their organizers. They were passing out signs and, passing out shirts. And they marched around in a circle. And there's about 30 of them, maybe 35. But the cameras would focus on 1 or 2 at a time. And they would stop one of them and ask questions. And the ones they asked questions of, they were plants. They were part of the crew that actually showed up. And the protesters would just walk behind him. It was really staged. It was incredibly staged. And then about 20 minutes later, they said they took all the shirts back. They gave them new shirts, okay, and new signs. And they did the same thing over again with different plants and interviewed them. Now, the funny thing is they were pre-planning disasters. The first one was an immigration protest. The next one was an abortion protest. Because you could read the signs and see what they're talking about. The next one was some California, law that they passed that everybody was upset about, like Article 46 or something. I know, whatever they call it. And they were all upset about that one. And then when they were done, they just passed out cash to everybody and these guys left. And it's Hollywood. It's a machine. Donald knows how to play the machine. Well, he's done it well so far, anyway. All right. Well, let's keep an eye on the future here. Let's look at all the negotiations that are going on and the diplomacy that's playing out there. And keep in mind, diplomacy is a wicked game. And that chessboard is huge with an indefinite number of players, and they can come at you from anywhere. We come back, we got Oops, I Arted. The Twins are at it again. Stay out of trouble, everybody. Be about it.